What's up, guys? In this video we're going to talk about this study. It's very sad. It's about children in school with the pandemic. Let's get into it. Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. We get you on the grind and improve your mind. So on a serious note, let's talk about how much damage the government has basically done in the past couple of years with the way they've handled the thing, the shot, the virus, the sickness, whatever you want to call it, whatever YouTube deems it as fine to talk about. So we're going to read off this article. It's sort of new in the news. We thought it'd be interesting to talk about. It has to do with the mindset of the youth and what's going to happen in the future and what our opinion on it. So let's get into it.
Yeah, so it's from the New York Times, so I'll put it on the screen so you guys can follow along, and I'll try to link the article as well in the description so you guys can read it yourself. Breaking news, test results show the pandemic's effect on U.S. students. The math and reading scores of 9-year-olds dropped steeply, erasing 2 decades of progress, which, that's bad.
Yeah, so right off the bat, I want to say that, we called this a long time ago. You can probably go back to our old videos from like 2020. We said that there was going to be some long-term damage, and we're starting to see the beginning of the damage that's being done. Today's kids are going to be growing up in a lot. We might do a completely different video on this subject alone, but kids in the future are going to be very different than the ones we know now. These kids are going to be raised in a society, and we were talking about this when we were exercising this morning. These kids are going to be raised in a world full of TikTok, full of technology, full of all the world's information that at such a young age is going to be available to these children at the movement of a thumb. They're going to be able to see the history. They're going to be able to see everything, all the naughty stuff online, all the stuff from the dark web. They're going to be able to see the good, of course. They're going to be seeing the knowledgeable things that they should be learning, but they're going to see the bad as well. And when you put all these things in a kid who has the mind of a sponge that absorbs everything they see on the internet, you're going to get a different mind. You're going to get a different kind of person that's going to be running this country and this world one day. We need to be extremely cautious as to what's going to happen next. We're going to see things change drastically. My prediction is I think it's going to get worse, personally. But the good news is that we can help you guys, and you guys can help yourselves by learning the right way or the best way possible that fits your lifestyle. You can learn the right things about how to eat, the right things about how to live, good things you can do to improve your daily life. Stay away from all the garbage, the toxic garbage that's on the internet for your own good. It's very important to become the 1% now, because the society that's coming up in the future, and the way these kids are being taught and everything being online, it's going to change everything. For the better or worse, we need to really watch out and be cautious of what's going to happen next. This is a warning to you guys watching this video. Be prepared for the future, because it does not look very good. I'm not trying to frighten anyone, but we need to be prepared, and you need to have an open mind to know what's going to come next. It's going to be different. We don't know if it's going to be good or bad. I think it's going to be a little bad, but there's only one way we can find out. We're going to have to see what happens. So let's get into this article without scaring you guys anymore.
Yeah, so I'll start reading it. See, it says, national test results released on Thursday showed in stark terms the pandemic's devastating effects on American school children, with the performance of 9-year-olds in math and reading dropping to the levels from 2 decades ago. This year, for the first time since the National Assessment of Educational Progress tests began tracking student achievement in the 1970s, 9-year-olds lost ground in math, and scores in reading fell by the largest margin in more than 30 years. The declines spanned almost all races and income levels and were markedly worse for the lowest performing students, while top performers of the 90th percentile showed a modest drop, 3 points in math. Students in the bottom 10th percentile dropped by 12 points in math, 4 times the impact. I was taken aback by the scope and the magnitude of the decline, said Peggy G. Carr, Commissioner of the National Center of Education Statistics, the federal agency that administered the exam earlier this year. The tests were given to a national sample of 14,800 9-year-olds and were compared with the results of tests taken by the same age group in early 2020, just before the pandemic took hold on the United States. High and low performers had been diverging even before the pandemic, but now the students at the bottom are dropping faster. In math, black students lost 13 points compared to 5 points among white students, widening the gap between the two groups. We don't think that there really is a purpose to that, but whatever. Research has documented the profound effect school closures had on low-income students and on Black and Hispanic students. in part because their schools were more likely to continue remote learning for longer periods of time. The declines in test scores mean that while many 9-year-olds demonstrate partial understanding of what they're reading, fewer can infer a character's feelings from what they have read. In math, students may know simple arithmetic facts, but fewer can add fractions with common denominators.
What I want to say is, shame on the governments. It's not just America's government, but the governments of the world who have failed in incredible heights to to try to do the right thing, try to control the populace when it came to this virus whole thing. When they all freaked out, put people inside their homes, canceled schools, made people... You've done a lot more damage than you did good. You tried to save people's lives, but actually you destroyed them. Not only did you cause more suicides, you caused depression. You caused the people to literally get dumber, as we're saying here. These kids will never forgive you. Well, some will, but some won't. We won't forgive you personally. I think the governments of the world, not only America, have literally destroyed a certain section of the world. Like, the world keeps spinning, and you guys try to interrupt that by being... You got scared, you panicked, you try to keep everybody home. Luckily, there are people like us who did not stay home. We defied the laws, and we turned out just fine. Because we knew it was all scam from the beginning, but many people, unfortunately, did not see what we did. And the unions of the schools, they decided to keep their kids out of school and at home and do online learning, which, by the way, none of these kids were focusing anyway when it came to the online schooling. And it was easier for them to get good grades because teachers and schools were more laid back online. And teachers could do whatever they want. I know a teacher who lives by me. I won't go into any details, but basically she was being with me in a certain way while her kids she was supposed to be teaching, and she turned off the laptop thing to go mess with me, and the kids were and so that's some pretty interesting. So a lot of teachers were not taking it very seriously either, because I think there's a certain thing about going to a school, actually having to dress up, putting effort into it. There's something professional about it. But when you're doing it from home, it's different. But that's a whole other thing. But basically, there was a lot of corruption in certain ways when all this happened, and it did long-term damage to these kids. And it's not a Democratic thing, it's not a Republican thing, it's a government thing. All of them, the Democrats, Republicans, they all chose to lock the country down, and in return, you get stuff like this where, it's going to take a massive toll. And, you had kids wearing masks, and, some kids in the country still are. So that's, who knows what's going to happen there. This is going to be some long-term damage, and we're already seeing the consequences of.
I'm also going to add to that and also say that a lot of this stuff is also the parents' fault. See, on the opposite end of that, where Andrew is talking about how the government and the school are at fault, yes, they are. But also, I feel like the parents are also at fault, because I feel like once schools closed and the schools had to do the online learning, you got to understand, and you should probably think back, when you were in school, you didn't really want to be there. The only reasons that you felt necessary for you to go to class and be in school was for socializing with friends. Maybe maybe you had teachers that were really nice and that you liked, hanging, being able to learn from. And maybe you were learning things at a specific time that you thought were interesting and that you actually enjoyed. Otherwise, you were praying every day that something would happen to where you would have school closed and you can be at home and relax and have a great time. And especially for us in the Northeast, we would hope for snow days, so we can be away from school and play in the snow and stuff like that. And so when the schools closed and the schools were like, yeah, you need to do this online learning, you need to do all this stuff, the kids think that it's just a months-long snow day and that they don't want to do this work because they don't have to put in the effort to go out and be in class. By actually moving yourself out of the house and going outside, doing those things, it's easier for you to do all that than to stay home, because when you're home, it's easier to be lazy and it's easier to do the things that you want to do instead of the things that you have to do. And parents, and I know a few parents, I've heard it in a lot of my jobs that I've worked at, a lot of parents I overhear them talking about the specific situations dealing with this stuff during the pandemic. They were talking about how their kids don't want to do the online learning. They're trying to fight with the schools to not have them do the online learning, or any aspect of it where either the kids didn't want to do the online learning, or the parents felt like it was not necessary for them to do the online learning. They felt like they should be going into schools or whatever. But they were hurting the kids because the kids are not learning the things that they should be learning, And so because of all that, the parents were not helping students learn by either not homeschooling them, by not forcing them to do the online classes. Teachers, like some that Andrew were talking about, did not care about the online learning either, and they were failing their students. And parents were trying to have their students taken out because their feelings were hurt, or they were feeling a certain way because that they had to do all this work from home and they feel like they shouldn't, even though it's it's out of their control. They have to get this work done. They have to learn. And so they have to understand that the parents are also at fault. They're at fault for these kids not learning anything because they pretty much let that happen.
Yeah, this is not a joke. This video is serious. This is going to have future impact into many generations, and it's only going to get worse. Because instead of being taught by teachers and institutions, even though that's corrupt as well, we're going to do another video about that. Don't need to worry about that. But, these kids are being raised on technology, and to top it all off, a lot of the parents, because we live in a crappy economy right now, which means both parents, hopefully there's two parents, are working all the time, and they don't have enough time to stay with their kids, whether it be mom or dad, two parents, hopefully, and they won't have enough time to be with their kids because both have to work in order just to make a decent income, just to keep the house that their children are in. So instead of their children being raised by their parents, they're being raised by the school and technology and all that. And which means your child has a lot more influence by the system rather than their parents. So that's a whole other thing, I guess.
The setbacks could have powerful consequences for a generation of children who must move beyond basics in elementary school to thrive later on. Student test scores, even starting in first, second, and third grade, are really quite predictive of their success later in school and their educational trajectories overall, said Susanna Loeb, the director of the Annenberg Institute of Brown University, which focuses on education inequality. The biggest reason to be concerned is the lower achievement of the lower achieving kids. Being so far behind could lead to disengagement in school, making it less likely that they would graduate from high school or attend college. I don't really think that fully matters, but at the same time, you never know. The National Assessment of Education Progress is considered a gold standard in testing. Unlike state tests, it is standardized across the country. She remained consistent over time and makes no attempt to hold individual schools accountable for results, which experts believe makes it more reliable. The test results offered a snapshot for just one age group, which is 9-year-olds, who are typically in 3rd or 4th grade. More results for 4th graders and for 8th graders will be released later this fall on a state-by-state level. So hopefully, maybe we'll do a part 2 and we'll find that out, because I think that would be more important, because those ones are like the tweeners. Those are the people they're more developed, where they can question things, where they can be like, why? Why is this like this? Blah, blah, blah.
Why?
This is a test that can unabashedly speak to federal and state leaders in a clear-eyed way about how much work we have to do, said Andrew Ho. Over time, scores in reading and especially math have generally trended upward or held steadily since the test was first administered in the early 1970s. That included a period of strong progress from the late 1990s and mid-2000s. Mid-2000s was us. But over the last decade or so, student scores had leveled off rather than gained, while gaps widened between low and high performing students. Then came the pandemic, which shuttered schools across the country almost overnight. Teachers taught lessons over Zoom, and students sat at home struggling to learn online, which we just talked about, that most of them just didn't either learn or didn't want to learn or didn't even do it. In some parts of the country, the worst of the disruption were short-lived, with schools reopening that fall. But in other areas, particularly in big cities with large populations of low-income students and students of color, which I don't know, whatever, schools remained closed for many months, and some did not fully reopen until last year. The national tests, Dr. Ho said, tell the story of a decade of progress, followed by a decade of inequality, and then a shock of the pandemic, which came with a 1-2 punch. It erased the progress, and it exacerbated the inequality. Now we have our work cut out for us. And it's going to just keep talking about how they're trying to figure out solutions on what to do. But honestly, the real solution right now...
Get the all-gain solution here.
...is, I feel like parents need to start really teaching their kids themselves, as well as... Because these kids now, because of the pandemic, they're behind. They're super behind. And they're not going to be as smart as, like, let's say we were when we were their age because they lost a year and a half of school and learning, and most of them didn't learn.
History. A lot of people don't even know the history of America. We might do a video on that. There's a TikTok circulating. We might do a breakdown of that. Stay tuned. We're also going to probably have an after video of a video release after this about why you should homeschool your kids. Possibly we can get into that. But yeah, guys, we need to awaken our eyes to what's going on in the world, and we need to adjust properly and be prepared for the future. We don't know what's coming yet, but things are going to change. Mark my words of this video. So be prepared. Try to keep living a healthy lifestyle that we preach on this channel, and just be aware of what's going on. Prepare. Don't get too emotional about it, but be logical. Think about what you can do to ready yourself and how to be the best you can be. So with that said, leave a comment in the comment section your thoughts on what's going on and your thoughts on this video. You can also hit the like button as well on the channel, and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. If you want to donate to the channel, and the funds will go towards the equipment and stuff for this channel, you can donate to the Cash App, link in the description below. And with that said, we're going to see you guys in the next video.